want to start a homeless ministry, and we want it to be like from the well homeless feeding ministry. But there's a lot of churches already doing that kind of stuff. And what you find is, and what we found, is there are churches much bigger than ours who have ministries that they still can't get enough volunteers to handle these ministries, which are amazing ministries. And I think we can have this like tribalism where we're like, well, we want to start the well homeless ministry, or we want to do this and that, and we want it to make it be ours. So our thing so far has been coming alongside already established ministries that have originated and are part of other churches, but that need help.
Welcome back to the Christians of Brevard Pastor Podcast. Today I'm joined by Pastor Nathan Walter. He and his wife Daisy founded the Well Ministry in 2021, which can be found in the Emerald Plaza, or as is known by locals, the Domino's Plaza, off of North Courtney Boulevard in Merritt Island. Prior to planting the Well, Nathan and Daisy have been in various forms of ministry for over 15 years and have released several music albums and worship albums together. They both lead worship at the Well, and it's a major part of their ministry culture. Pastor Nathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Very good. I appreciate you joining me today. And, I think it's going to be sort of interesting to talk about your music career and the industry experience. But maybe we'll just start in 2021 first with the founding of the Well. I can imagine it might have been a little bit of a hectic time coming out of COVID.
Oh man, now that you mention it, I didn't even think about COVID and all that entailed. But I just we've been doing ministry for a while. And I think that not just COVID, but I definitely think COVID helped to bring to light some things we wanted and things we didn't want, and what we were willing to compromise and what we weren't willing to compromise, and what we wanted in a church. And I didn't actually set out to be like, hey, I'm gonna go start a church. I actually was looking around and calling different friends in ministry, and kind of saying what I was looking for. And I kept getting like the answer of like, you're never going to find that. We're just not going to find that, man. And not that I believe that that's true. But I was just like, man, this is, the common answer is like, you're not going to find this. And I was like, well then, I'll just do it, I guess. I'm not the person that's like, hey, I have to be the leader. I have to start things or be in charge. I'm not that person, but I am the type person that's like, well, hey, if no one else will do it, I'll do it. And so we started a house church, really no plan didn't know what God was going to do. Just like, hey, we'll just start a house church and see what happens. And within a few weeks, the HOA wasn't very happy. But within a month, a building opened, and there's another church by the name of Seed of Abraham that had bought another building and needed to rent their old building out. They were still in a lease for a little bit. And so they offered to take on half the lease if we could come in and take the building. So within a month, we had our building because of the graciousness of another church. And so, I mean, we definitely hit the ground running. We didn't plan to hit the ground running or anything, but when God's working, things tend to all come together when they need to.
So when you said you sort of were looking for very specific things, was it like a particular ministry culture? I mean, what sort of was your vision?
Well, it was a lot of things. I wanted a specific church culture. I wanted to be in the Word. I'm not trying to say any churches I'd been to in this area were like this, because when you say like you have a vision, I'm not implying no one else is doing that. But I just think overall in America, we have a ton of lukewarm Christians. It feels like Christianity is more like I don't know, sometimes it can feel like church is like a social club. And while I'm not against social things at churches, I just think that I was like, man, when I read in the Bible, these people cared about each other. They were praying together. They were studying the Word together. They were strong Christians, and they were seeking Christ together. And I think that in every church, there's a contingent of people who do that. I do. But I just think that like we've come to in church, we say like, oh, well, if you have a church this size, 20% of the people are going to be the workers. 20% are going to be like the people who are involved. And we've just come to like accept this. It's like, this is the way things are. And I just don't think that's how it was intended. And we shouldn't accept it. We shouldn't accept, hey, we should only expect 20% of the people to actually be disciples of Christ. And that's another element. Like, are we getting people saved, or are we creating disciples? And just and I just was like, I want this relationship with people. I want to have this church culture. I want it to be a family. I want to be transparent. I want to be in the Word. I want to be honestly and openly worshiping God. And I do believe that in all the churches there are contingents of people who do this within the church. Um, but I was like, we can't just take things people have said, like this is the church nowadays, and say, well, that's just what it is. That's what we have to work with. I think we have to say, no, that's not what we see in the Bible. And we have to, and that's what we're striving for.
How are you taking steps to solve some of those issues that you've seen develop in other churches?
Well, we kick a lot of people out. No, I'm just kidding. No, honestly, I think one of the things is I don't think church is supposed to always be comfortable. We shouldn't always leave feeling good. Um, uh, like when I read the word, the Spirit convicts me of sin. It draws me near to God, which is amazing, but also shows me things that need to change. And I find that, a lot of people don't want to hear that. People will either like, if you're preaching against a sin, people who don't want to hear that, who are living in sin, and they don't want to be convicted, don't want to make a change, they don't stay. They won't stay. And I think that is a major part. But I also think, we're a small church, and when a church is small, I do think sometimes people will intentionally go to a large church as a visitor. And the whole thought is, and I know people like this, they want to get in, they want to get out. They don't want to know anyone or be seen. They're just going to church and leaving. They don't want to be a part of anything. And it's easy to hide. And we're small. And I know most of the people here I meet, if visitors come, I meet them. Like you can't hide. And I think this combination of like truth in the Word and this small church where you can't really hide, it facilitates a certain type of community. It just does. Because people who want to be known come, people who want to get in the Word come, people who want to change their lives come, and people who don't necessarily want to do that don't come. And I'm not saying I don't want those people to ever be like that, or ever fall in love with Christ, or love Jesus, or come back. But our goal is not to grow in numbers. I think sometimes you can create a system where like we're trying to grow in numbers. I mean, once I became a pastor, man, all the advertisements I started getting were like, how to grow your church. We started a church, 15 people. Now we're 4,000. How to do this as quickly as possible. And I don't think that's healthy. I don't think it's healthy, because then you don't have the foundation of who you are in a community. So I've always said, look, we're trying to grow down. We're trying to grow roots. We're trying to grow in our relationship with Christ. Whatever happens number-wise happens. But that's not the goal. Because I think sometimes if you make that the goal, and I understand the desire to like spread the word to as many people as possible. But if the goal is growth, and we use business systems to grow, then we might just end up with a business, and not a church.
I read you do a regular corporate worship service every month.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like a worship and prayer type service, right? So maybe you could explain a little bit about those types of things that you're doing that are sort of engaging your congregation, you feel to be a closer family than maybe you've seen in other churches, or to deal with some of that alienation or atomization that sometimes affects large church cultures.
Well, the worship and prayer service is actually really cool. And we didn't actually, we say, hey, we're going to worship and pray. You don't really know like who's going to come, what it's going to turn into. Um, and at first people came and didn't participate too much. There's like this shy, like, I don't know, everyone, when you're doing something new or you've never done it in a church setting, it can be a little bit, I don't know, just everybody's kind of shy. But what it's become is people come up and say what's going on in their lives and they want prayer. People and when someone else does it, it encourages someone else to do it. And so at worship and prayer, we have this like people are being very transparent with their needs, with things that are going on. We've had people who are having issues with their pregnancy that are scary to them. People who are, caught in sin and admitted to it, admitting to it and asking for prayer. And we'll pray together. We'll lay hands on them. We pray for them. We like say, hey, who have you been praying for? What's a prodigal in your family or a friend that you've been praying for forever? Give us their name so we can pray with you for them. And then we have a list and we all pray for each other's, prodigals. And it creates this sense. And I would say, listen, I'm not going to pray. I'm not going to be the one to pray. You're going to pray for them. You're going to pray for them. Because we have to learn like prayer is powerful and it's a weapon, and we can't just rely on the pastor. Like, oh, the pastor prays. So, because there is a culture where it's like, I need to go see the pastor or the priest and they will pray. Because their relationship with God is better than mine. Which may be true, but it doesn't have to be true because they're a pastor or a priest. And so we encourage like, now you're going to pray for this person. And so it's really, people have really come out of their shells, and gone up and shared like, hey, God's been dealing with me in this verse. And you've just seen, it's kind of cool seeing people I never thought would ever have the guts to come up and say anything, like watching them grow in their faith, and in their confidence in, I don't know, and it's just brought us all closer. It's really cool.
So maybe we do jump back a little bit then and talk about your background. You and your wife, Daisy, will involve very heavily, I know, in music. I think your project was called The Quiet Science, right? I went back and I listened to some of your past albums. And you were doing that for, since 2008. So that was quite a while.
Yeah.
Maybe before that too, I don't know. But what was that part of your life looking like? And do you think that sort of influenced what you brought to the well, or do you think of it as like two separate parts of your life?
No, it's definitely influenced it. We were a Christian band. We played in churches and we would play in bars. We play in like teen centers. So we were coming across different people, different walks of life. I would give my testimony every night, no matter if we were in a bar, because that's what we were doing. Like, this is a ministry. Like, we're trying to tell people, the earlier albums are a little bit more allegorical and trying to explain like what it was like coming to know Christ. Because like growing up, I listened to a lot of like depressing music, and that's what draws people's like, hey, this person's singing about like a feeling that I identify with, but then they don't offer a way out. You just sit in it. And I was like, but I found a way out, and I want to, sing about that through stories and stuff. But I would always give my testimony, so there was no question as to what I'm talking about. And later we would do worship too. And we still make, I think we released an album last year, like a little EP. We still make music because it's a large part of our life. But what I saw everywhere we went, we'd be playing with Christian bands. Man, there was just, I was like, do any of these people follow God? Like, I'm serious. We played with like hundreds of bands and in many churches, and like we had like 3 bands, I'd tell you, to be like, these people love God. These people love God. These people act different than the world. Because if we played with a secular band or a Christian band, you'd see the same types of behaviors at the bar, the same things. Same like, um, stuff with the way they behaved with women afterwards. It was just like, man, I'm like, all right, am I playing with a Christian band or playing with Def Leppard here? Like, what's happening? And so it really, and we would also see that like kind of some of the churches would judge. Like there was, we played one time with this band that kind of wore black, and another band that had clean cut, dressed nice. Well, the clean cut dressed nice band they were like drunk the entire tour. I was like, who's driving this van? And I remember watching the singer with a girl outside of a church, and she was underage, and he was trying to get her to drink with him. And she was like, I don't know about drinking, at a church, and I'm not 21. And he's like trying to talk her into it. So we go into the church, and they actually, the band that was wearing black, they wouldn't let him play because they didn't like the way they looked. And these guys love God. And he was honestly like, afterward, he talked to the pastor. He was like, listen, if he didn't want us to play, like, because the way we look, that's fine. But I would have liked to at least talk about God. We didn't even have to play our music, but I wanted to talk about Jesus. And, but afterwards, all these people were going up to the other band that was dressed nice and like being like, man, we just love what you're doing for God. And I was just appalled, with the church. For like, you can't, like, you're just judging people based on how they look. And it's like, do we not, like, and these guys love God, and these people, if you smell them, you'll smell like these guys are like wasted. And so with all these different experiences, we're like, man, there's a lack of authenticity in the church. We're judging people based on the way they look. There's people that are leading that don't love Jesus. They're not disciples of Christ. And it was just like, there's, even though that's like the music realm, it bleeds into the church too. It bleeds into the church. You have people who are in leadership that you're like, this person is a business leader, and they have money. I don't know how much they spend time with God, but we like the way they look, and we like what they can do for our ministry. And you just get kind of like, man, I don't think this is how the church is supposed to look. I don't think this is how things are supposed to be. And I've been to churches where like, look, I would never invite someone. If I saw someone at the store and they had a certain look, I wouldn't invite them to my church because people would judge them, And so I was like, I want a church where people are welcome to come and like, find Jesus here, I know that was a long rant, but just things I saw that I was like, these are things that shouldn't be. These are things like, and I never saw them being like, oh, I'm going to make a church that's like this. But once we started a church, like, man, this is what I want to see. This is what I don't want to see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that rant. So do you feel that like music is a way that people still encounter Christ, like maybe out in the world? Do you think the music industry is still kind of a crucial part of getting people to come into the doors, or do you really not view it that way? I mean, I know that's kind of typically what kind of the seeker-friendly movement and different churches for a long time, even going back to the Jesus movement, really saw music as a way of engaging the lost for Christ. Do you, still view music ministry like that? And what's that like at the Well?
Well, I'm torn. Because like I said, I've seen, I was just talking to a friend a few minutes ago, and I was like, being in a band and in a Christian band, you have this business side where you're promoting your band, you're promoting yourself. And I think Christian music, there's Christian music that's aimed at the lost. And then there's stuff that's worship, and it's still the promotion has mixed into worship. which I think I'm okay with it when it's like, hey, we're trying to reach the lost and this is what we're doing. But when worship becomes promotion, and I've even seen like a major worship leader from a huge band everyone's into, and they were like, if someone says you're a worship leader, but they don't like how much money you're making, like, how do you tell them? How do you like, say, well, this is why, like, rationalize it? And this girl said, or this woman said, well, see, we're worship leaders, but we're also entertainers. And I was like, if you're entertaining, you're trying to draw attention to yourself, not to God. To me, a worship leader needs to get out of the way. Like, and if you've never, and a lot of churches are like, hey, we're going to pay these people who are good musicians, but don't know God to come lead worship. But you can't lead people into the throne room of God if you've never been yourself. Like, there's these things we've been willing to compromise on, and we have great excuses for it. Amazing excuses for compromising on things. But I think, a worship leader should be someone who worships God, and people will follow. People will follow. We've kind of created all these techniques to like create hype. And I hate that stuff. It's just like, and I'm not saying, cause like as a musician, if you're into a band, you start to kind of copy that band because you like them and you're influenced by them. And you see this in worship with the way people worship on stage. And in some part of me, like I said, I'm torn. In some part of me, I'm like, okay, they're influenced by this worship leader, and so they're kind of mimicking them. But in another side of me, I'm like, but hey, this is like a falseness, like I want, there needs to be a sincerity between each person and God, and it needs to be true worship between a person and God, and not about hype or creating this thing, so there's a balance for sure. And I think every church, and I think other churches try to figure out that balance. But because I spent so long in the music industry, like I want worship, but I definitely have an aversion to music industry type things that get into the church.
I don't know if you remember this, but I was watching some of your old videos on your YouTube, and you sort of described seeing yourself at that time as not really a worship leader. You didn't want to do worship. You were a Christian band, but it was a different thing. And there was some experience you were describing where you kind of saw that you could sort of enter more into the worship leader role. I'm a piano player myself, so I grew up playing in church, and I never really was in the industry per se. I play different gigs around town and whatnot. But just growing up in it, I have kind of found myself enjoying not doing worship at a church that I attend anymore, just sitting in the congregation and actually experiencing worship, because it's like a totally different thing than having to almost get into performance mode, So have you sort of developed more into the worship role, and do you find yourself enjoying that more?
I go back and forth because as we get more people, we have more musicians who we want to get involved and who want to get involved. So I don't have to, and I'm preaching too, so it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So I do enjoy leading worship. I actually feel like, when you're like, as a pastor or someone with responsibility out in the crowd, sometimes it's easy to get distracted about and start thinking about things. Maybe think about my sermon, think about, oh man, it's hot in here, so I have someone turn the AC down, or like, oh man, that didn't sound right. Or especially as a musician. As a musician, you can hear mistakes, and you can hear, and I've had to learn to be like, to just let it go and be like, look, I'm worshiping, like, stop. But I do find when I am on stage worshiping, I'm playing, and I can't think about those things because I'm thinking about what I'm doing, which I enjoy. Because really, whether I'm on the floor or up there, really it's about like, how much how much of my attention is going to God and how much is going to other things. And I've been able to find this balance, I guess, where I can worship sincerely from the stage and I can worship sincerely from the ground. Um, and so it's a really good place to be in. I think, a lot of musicians, they would rather be on stage than on the ground. And they'd always rather be a part of it than not. But I do think there is a key element to worship that you should be able to do it not on the stage, just as sincerely. And if what's happening on the stage is different or more demonstrative than what you do when you're on the ground, then are you performing? Or are you trying to create an atmosphere or hype people up? Or is that really what's happening in your heart? Because I think what is happening on the floor and what is happening on the stage should be the same.
You guys are still a relatively new church. I mean, founded in 2021. I don't know about the oldest church in Brevard County, but I know the oldest church in Melbourne is 1886. So, there's a big gap there.
A little bit.
So you guys are still, pretty relatively new. So I don't know if you've had a lot of opportunities to sort of grow into the community yet, but I'm curious if there's been any successful sort of outreach efforts, or can you describe kind of what the relationship with the community has looked like so far?
I think that, when a church gets started, they're like, hey, we want to create this type of ministry. Like, let's say we want to start a homeless ministry. And there's like, we want it to be like from the well homeless feeding ministry. But there's a lot of churches already doing that kind of stuff. And they already have it set up. And what you find is, and what we found is, there are churches much bigger than ours who have ministries that they still can't get enough volunteers to handle these ministries, which are amazing ministries. And I think, we can have this like tribalism, where we're like, well, we want to start the well homeless ministry, feeding ministry, or we want to do this and that. And we want it to make it be ours, But what we've done is kind of just admitted who we are and what we can do and what we can't. And we're a small group. There's Overlook Ministry. They're a homeless feeding ministry, and they need people to help. And so it's not from our church. It wasn't started at our church. It's never going to be based at our church, but they need help. So will we send people to help? Yeah. And then we get involved. Then we take over. If they do it 4 weeks in a month, we've taken on 1 week a month, say we will take care of this ministry, and we'll like staff it or send the volunteers for this. And kind of, so our thing so far has been kind of coming alongside already established ministries that have originated and are part of other churches, but that need help. And kind of finding our place and like, hey, what can we do to aid this ministry? Like New Life Mission, and we give financially to a lot of things, but New Life Mission, as a small church, we don't have a lot of money to give, but we have people. And so kind of we talked to them, and what we ended up doing is doing some things over the summer and at Christmas, like providing food and, activities for the kids and the families, and coming and hanging out with them and feeding them. And it doesn't really cost us a lot, but it also puts us in relationship with not just the organization, but the people that you're trying to reach. And so that's mainly what we've been doing, is coming alongside other organizations. But also I'm really into creating opportunities for us to talk to people. Because I think that, Christians, we have this thing where we go on like a mission trip to other countries, and we do those. And we do things like, oh, we're going to build a house. And I'm not like trying to diss that, but I've been on mission trips where I've never talked to anyone in that country. I just stayed with my group. and built them something. And when I look at Acts, I'm like, but is that I mean, where's the gospel being preached? There needs to be a relationship. There needs to be like person to person conversation. Um and so we've tried, like, with Overlook and with New Life, like, just examples. It'd be like, we want opportunities not just to give financially, but to put us and our people at the church in position to meet and talk with people and to sit at a table and eat with them, and there to be a real relationship formed, or we can learn to kind of relearn. I think Christians have kind of, and not all, but we've come to think of missions, I think, as giving money or going to another country 1 week a year and building something and come back. And I just don't and giving away things, giving away a lot of things. And if we've, like, built 1 million homes and given out food to 5 million people and fed them or gave them water, but none of them were led to Jesus, then we haven't actually fulfilled the mission that we've been given. That's basically our focus, coming alongside missions that are already mission areas that are already established, that already have their systems in place and just need help, and we fill in gaps. But I try to focus on things where we're actually, like, getting involved with, like, people on the ground.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in sort of pooling our resources together in some of these collaborative ministries that can sort of network the church, because we have so many churches in Brevard County. I think it's something like almost 400, and some of them are rather large, but a lot of them are fairly small. And the ability of a small church to sort of reach out into the community, into some of these needs, is limited by their size. And so when you have ministries like you mentioned, New Life, and Overlook, they're able to sort of do much more with all the small pieces of the church that are contributing to them, which is really cool to see. Not to show any specific ministries, but like, I just was reached out to by Capernaum Place is a new facility in Melbourne, put together by Wings of Grace, that is basically providing housing to solve a lot of the issues with children who are coming out of the foster care system and don't have homes or anywhere to go afterwards. A lot of those just end up on the street. And so it's a Christian ministry, very Jesus Christ-centered. I mean, their project, it's millions of dollars to build this facility that they opened. And so, that's not something that a small church can do. That's a huge issue. So yeah, big believer in that, and love to hear it. Maybe as we just close out, I asked this question of everybody, and then I'm going to give you a chance to let people know where they can find the well too. But before we do that, if you can answer this question, in your experience living in Brevard County, in Merritt Island area, is there something in the community that you feel is underserved, or in our Christian culture here in Brevard County, that you think is unfortunately lacking, whether it be in the community or in a sort of Christian culture, and something that we as Christians and as the church can hopefully solve?
I don't think anything I would say is something no one's ever thought of or said before. And honestly, I do think that I've seen movements within the church to address even some of the things I've been talking about. Because I do think one of the biggest issues we have within the church is that we've cultivated lukewarm churches. Or not necessarily, and I don't believe everybody at any particular church is lukewarm, but we've allowed a large contingent of our society in America to be lukewarm Christians. And when you read the letters to the churches in Revelation, that should scare us. I think we've kind of lost a little bit of our fear of the Lord. But I don't think I'm alone in this. I think I'm seeing a lot of people beginning to feel this way. I'm seeing a lot of movement within churches and with Christians that are kind of starting to understand, like, hey, maybe we've gotten off a little bit. And I think that's true of Brevard County, just as in anywhere else. I think that, I don't know, I wouldn't necessarily call us Bible Belt, but I think that, there's always this like cultural Christianity that is really very, it contrasts with being a disciple of Christ. Um, but I don't think I'm like, me saying this is like, man, this guy's forward thinking and he's ahead of everyone else. I think that a lot of people are realizing that, and I'm starting to see um, movements within the church and within young people, um, because people are looking for something that's honest and true. And in this world where it's like, what is truth? You're finding this pushback of young people desiring truth. And I think the church needs to get out of the way. We we try to create things to make it easy for people to come, or to sell the church, or not talk about certain sins because we want people to be accepted. And we're trying to help God. We're trying to help God. But the gospel on its own has always, like, that's what the power is in the word. The power is in the word of God. Um, and Jesus never like went easy on anybody. He gave them truth, and I just think if we will give truth and stick to the word of God, like, God can do amazing things in our community, um, and in the world, if we would just allow Him to move and just stop trying to, like, I don't know, we kind of like muzzle Him a little bit so that people don't hear things that they might not like. It's like, man, God is God. He and His word is powerful, and so let's get back to the word and allow Him to change hearts and move hearts, and not depend on our um I don't know, on the things we create that we think will help.
Okay. Well, why don't you, as we just close out, let people know you might have some people there in Merritt Island area or surrounding that don't have a church right now and they might be looking for a church. So if they were interested in getting involved with the Well Ministry, how would they find you guys? How would they get in contact? Let them know.
Well, we're best way is in the Emerald Plaza, behind Domino's. I think it's 925 North Courtney Parkway, Suite 18. And the best way to get involved is just come. Like, we're small. If you've never been here, there'll be people who notice that, and they'll talk to you. Um and then, like, I would just advise, like, if you come and you like it, like, come to the Bible studies. Um Come to everything that we have, because that's where you're going to get a relationship. And I think that Christians who are seeking God need to be in strong relationship, and that's where it kind of begins. But just come and see. We may be for you, we may not be for you. We don't think we're the only God-fearing church in the area, or the only church there is. We might be for you, we might not be for you, um but if you come, we'll know you're new, and we'll talk to you.
Thanks for joining again, Pastor Nathan, and many blessings for the Well Ministry.